Hey all, so got another guide here, and this time we're going to be talking about Masacre, who's been one of my favorite skill champions for a while. He also has the Defiance tactic, which is extremely relevant in this and next war season. He's been pretty good for me in Battlegrounds. I use him almost every day in AQ and Map 8. I recently soloed one of the Eternity of Pain fights with him. Just a really, really solid character, but there is some nuance to how to use him, and so we're going to be going over that. Now, I don't normally talk about the signature ability first, but this time it's simple enough that I think that it serves a purpose. Basically, while the opponent is not incinerated, you gain power faster, you crit more often. Very simple. Both of those things are good for his overall ramp up, but both of those things are good in most fights anyway. More crits is more damage, more combat power is more specials, which is usually more damage and more control. Good signature ability to have, not critical, no pun intended, but very helpful. So then moving on, the first thing listed here, it does let you know that, Masacre's kit is built around incinerating the opponent, but if your opponent cannot be incinerated, as long as it is a true immunity that does not stop him, he still does plenty of damage. Some people have found this out the hard way because some alliances like to place Masacre on hazard shift nodes, and then you'll try and use somebody who's incinerate immune on the node. It will try to incinerate you because it's Masacre trying to do it via the node. You will then take direct damage every time that happens. Sorry, not direct damage, energy damage. Important distinction. But this is also very good offensively because it means that Masacre can take somebody like Cosmic Ghost Rider, Colossus, even Apocalypse, and them being Incinerate immune is not a problem at all. I take a Red Goblin most days in AQ, and it just mows him right down. It's a very potent source of damage. So it's important to know with Masacre which of his hits are the baseball bat attacks. And that's the first medium, and then the first three light attacks, and then all of the heavy attack. So all of those play into his cycle of becoming ignited, which is the core of his kit. So while he is not ignited, all baseball bat attacks, so everything but the final medium, the final light, and then his special attacks, those all have a certain amount of block penetration, and when you crit, or when you hit the opponent's block, you'll gain one ignition charge. And these now last 20 seconds. Back over a year ago, before he was buffed, they only lasted 10 seconds, and so it was kind of hard to get him ignited sometimes. Now he works much more smoothly. So those critical hits also deal a burst of energy damage for each ignition charge that you've built up. This is again a pretty significant source of damage. Basically what this means is that even if you're having trouble getting ignited, as long as you are landing crits, which his signature ability will help you with, you will have some ignition charges and you will be doing some extra damage in the form of those red numbers, in this case energy. This is one thing I really like about Masacre's kit. Most of the ways in which he does damage have some redundancy built into them. So it's like, okay, yeah, this is how you're supposed to use him, but if there's something about the fight that's getting in the way of his ideal form, he's still going to help you out. In this case, even if you're having trouble getting ignited, you're still going to be doing this energy damage. So obviously the purpose of building these ignition charges is to then become ignited, and so that happens when you reach 10. So some combination of hitting into the opponent's block or landing critical hits. Eventually, when you get to 10, you become ignited for 20 seconds, and while you're ignited, you can't gain any more ignition charges. Fair enough. So while you're ignited, the block penetration that you get earlier is now doubled. So you're hitting harder through blocks, and when you hit into the opponent's block, you gain power normally. Now, That normally deserves a little asterisk because this is actually ability power as opposed to combat power, which means that if you are fighting something like a polka dot power node, where you would not normally gain power from landing hits, this will give you power. It will just give you the amount of power that you would have gotten from landing hits. But this also means that if you have something that is affecting your ability power, like a petrify or a wither, then that will affect this. So understand that it is calibrated to be as much power as you would gain from just hitting them while they weren't blocking, but it's not literally combat power. It's not exactly the same as the power that you would get if you were just hitting them without blocking. This counts as being from an ability source. That said, very helpful because you're doing extra damage while you're hitting into them and you're gaining power while you do so, right? And then if these baseball bat attacks hit the opponent, then they cause these incinerates that last for 5 seconds. And then, like all incinerates, that removes perfect block chance and reduces block proficiency, which feeds back into the fact that you have extra block penetration and are gaining power while hitting into their block. So in general, Masacre just works very, very well while hitting into the opponent's block. So then, like it says, there's also a compounding effect to these incinerates, where the more of them that are on the opponent, the longer each new one lasts. So if you stay aggressive and you can get your opponent to 5 incinerates, then each new incinerate will last 10 seconds, not only 5. So you can end up doing a lot of energy damage this way. I'm going to go ahead and skip over to the special one, because while we're talking about getting a lot of incinerates on the opponent, this is the key of how these numbers really spike. Because the special one refreshes all active incinerates on the opponent. So this is how you stay aggressive, you start building a lot of incinerates, you throw the special one, and maybe you had 8 incinerates on the opponent, but 3 or 4 of them were about to expire. Now they all go back to their full duration. You keep hitting into the opponent. You keep building incinerates. If you can stay aggressive and keep throwing special ones, it is possible to build up to, theoretically limitless numbers of incinerates. But I have, in Labyrinth of Legends fights, I have gotten up to 20, 30 without too much difficulty, and it is a lot of damage. So then, if the general idea is to get these incinerates up and keep them up, then what do you do if your ignition runs out? Because you're no longer going to be gaining power while you're hitting into the opponent's block, so ramping back into ignition that way might be a little bit slow. Maybe you're going to lose them. So the other way that you can build ignition charges is hitting an opponent that is incinerated. So just hitting your opponent more will help with that. Additionally, if you crit, that still works. So the sources of ignition charges stack. If you crit on an incinerated opponent, that gives you 2 charges, not 1. Additionally, this is where we come back to the heavy attack. The heavy attack gives you an extra ignition charge if the opponent is incinerated, and the heavy attack has 4 hits in it. So what this means is, if you have 0 ignition charges, but your opponent is incinerated, and you throw the heavy attack, you gain a minimum of 8 ignition charges. If the heavy attack crits twice, boom, you're ignited again. If it doesn't crit twice, well then odds are you can probably just hit into them in combo again, and your first medium and your first light will give you the last 2 that you need. And then it's back off to the races, you push up to your special one again. This is the most basic Masacre damage rotation. You get ignited, you spam special one, you stay ignited, you use the heavy to help you get there faster. But there are some other things that his kit can do for you too. So first off, let's go back to the special one and take a look at this disorient. At 12 seconds, this is one of the longer disorients in the game. Nick Fury's is only 8. A lot of the others are in that range. This lasts 12 seconds, and if you throw this while the opponent isn't incinerated, like maybe you're fighting a bleed immune opponent, then it gets 200% extra duration, right? Which means that this can be a 36-second disorient. And so that's going to reduce defensive ability accuracy and block proficiency by 50%. So if you're hitting into the opponent and you're not able to incinerate them, this is another way to reduce their block proficiency and make sure that you're doing damage that way while you're going through that. But it's also just a pretty potent ability accuracy reduction, right? Now, this is supposed to stack with this line over here that says that opponents have minus 50% ability accuracy when they're blocking you, as long as they have at least one debuff on them, which disorient is a debuff. So that should mean that those two add up together and get you to 100% ability accuracy reduction when you are striking the block of an opponent that has a disorient on them. But this apparently has not worked ever since he was buffed last year in 2021. Hopefully that gets fixed soon, because that's kind of annoying that it just flat out doesn't work. Anyway, this is very strong. It can help you get through a lot of different mechanics. The lane that I take with him in AQ has Rise to Power in it, which you will remember from Battlegrounds. That's the node where after you knock the opponent down, they gain a burst of power when they then hit you or your block for a short amount of time. Because that triggers when the opponent is being knocked down and is therefore a defensive ability, Masacre can shut that off roughly 50% of the time, which makes those fights much, much easier. It also just applies to a whole suite of other abilities and can even save you if you get auto-blocked from being stunned, if it is the kind of auto-block that can trigger parry. So the special one also applies some bleeds. These are not the strongest bleeds in the world. They are very long at 20 seconds, which makes him quite good for bleed vulnerability nodes or anything else that triggers off of bleeding. But don't expect these to be a big contributor to your damage output. They're just a little bit of a bonus. I'm going to skip over to the special 3 for a second because it's so simple. This applies a stronger Incinerate. This is a little more than 4 times the damage of the generic ones, lasts for 5 seconds. Because this is only one Incinerate and the special 3 doesn't do all that much damage, the primary use of this is, remember when I talked about how the heavy attack can get you from 0 ignition charges all the way to 10 if you crit twice against an opponent that's already incinerated? You throw the special 3, then throw the heavy attack, you're probably ignited. So that's basically the reason that you would use that. So let's talk about the special 2 for a little bit, because this can do some pretty dramatic stuff. Masacre's base attack rating as a rank 3 given my masteries is about 3,000. As you can see here, the special 2 gets 40,000 and change extra attack rating if you throw it into block. This allows it to hit very, very hard. If you are ignited, it doubles the block penetration from that again. Now you're up to almost 2,900 points of block penetration. If the opponent is incinerated, remember they don't have a perfect block chance, and their block proficiency is reduced even further. Same if you've managed to put a disorient on them. And this is a beautiful little safety net. If you throw this into the block, you will then cause attacks coming in to miss for a short window afterward, allowing you to do this safely without getting wrecked, even at short range. So let's talk about how to set that up. Because, of course, you can just build up to 2 bars of power, and then wait for your opponent to block, probably hit into them with maybe a medium light, and then throw the special 2. Remember that while you're ignited, you gain power while hitting the opponent's block, so you can be ignited and be at like 1.7 bars, and then wait for them to block, go hit in, do your even 5-hit combo and then throw the special 2 that you just gained and have it do all of this extra damage. That's very fun. I do that all the time. But if you're dealing with an aggressive opponent that doesn't seem to want to block, or if you are, just not feeling particularly patient, there are two very good ways to line that up and encourage the AI to block for it. Now, as a disclaimer, because this relies on AI manipulation, if you are watching this sufficiently far into the future, it's possible neither of these no longer works, or maybe one of them doesn't. But at the moment, I am very confident in both of these and have been testing them both extensively. Like I said, I use this guy in AQ every day for the past several weeks planning for this guide. So the two ways that you can be basically 99% sure that the opponent will block your special 2 without waiting for them to block and then hitting into it are you can do a 4-hit combo, back up, and immediately throw it. So I'm talking medium, light, 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 dash back, immediately throw the special 2. And it has to be immediate, or the opponent may tap block and then come in. I'm pretty sure what this exploits is the part of the AI that is trying to avoid backdraft intercepting. This is the part of the AI that makes it very difficult to get a special intercept with Venom Pool or with Black Panther. The part that makes it difficult in many parts of the game for you to do medium, light, 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 dash back, and then immediately combo again. They love to block right there, even if it is just to throw off their own rhythm. But if you throw the special 2 right away after dashing back, you'll catch them in that little block that they're doing to break the tempo, and you'll do a ton of damage. The other tactic that works for me is finish a 5-hit combo into the opponent, pause for a split second, and then throw the special 2. But the timing on this is also pretty persnickety. Your 5-hit combo has to be absolutely perfectly tight. You cannot pause before the last medium. It has to be medium, light, 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 medium, as quickly and efficiently as you can go, then a pause, then the special 2. If you pause at all, if you hesitate before that final medium, the opponent will probably not block, because something about that hesitancy seems to tell them, hey, I'm vulnerable, and then they come in and try to attack you, and if they're trying to attack you, they're obviously not blocking. Now, I say 99% because I have had both of these fail when I am very sure that I executed them properly, but as long as you are paying attention to that timing, as long as you, for the backdraft one, instantly release, or for the pause one, are on top of the combo itself and then hesitate, both of those work the vast majority of the time, and then you're going to get probably an ignited special 2 into an incinerated opponent, and this just ends an awful lot of fights. Like in AQ, this will very often do 80,000 damage into an opponent that you've already hit a fair number of times. It doesn't always end every fight on day 5, but up until then, I mean, this thing is a bruiser. And if you are taking him onto a node with pull on it, which amps up projectiles, or if you're taking one of those Act 8 weapon nodes that increases block penetration hits or power shield or anything like that, like, this can get nutty very quickly. So I think it is worth practicing both of these techniques in addition to just throwing it into normal block to really get the most out of Masacre. But that really is the core to him. He does have higher than average block proficiency, so you can use that. But for the most part, Masacre is a damage machine. He just does a lot of damage, generally over time, but with the special 2, you can do a lot of it with actual hits as well. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of his synergies. The one with the Deadpools, nice. Like I said, the bleeds on his special 1 are quite long, so this increases your crit rating even further. Crits are good. Crits help get him ignited faster. Not important. The Gwenpool one, which is also the Venompool one, is, however, quite good. So, the Gwenpool side of it doesn't really matter. Yeah, her Incinerates last longer, but her Incinerates aren't very good. The Masacre side, increasing Ignited's duration from 20 seconds to 25 seconds, that extra 5 seconds can get you to another special 1, can get you to your special 2, so you can throw it with the extra block penetration. It's just very good, right? It makes his kit flow together that much better. The one with Domino is perhaps his most famous because it's part of the old school Domino Trinity with Masacre, her, and Red Hulk. It's not bad at all for Masacre. He can start with up to 5 ignition charges. It's not critical, but like I said, he's mainly a damage champion, and it gets you rolling on your damage faster. The one with Daredevil is actually very good for Devil of Hell's Kitchen, but really this is pretty useless. It's only a 10% chance to evade, and only when you would have been wrecked anyway, so very weak safety net. Not really worth thinking about from his side of things. The one with Red Hulk is excellent. Like I said, this is part of that Trinity with Domino, but it's also just good for Masacre. Remember, like I said, he blocks better than most champions, and while you're ignited, this can just mean more Incinerates. This one with Vulture is pretty cool. 15% extra debuff duration. That should apply to stuns and allow him to get around Limber. It applies to his Disorient, it applies to his Incinerates, his Bleeds. Great. We're going to make him easier to use, and he's going to do more damage. And then this last one, I don't normally talk about synergies that are basically entirely outward-facing, but this one is so good that I have to mention it, and that's Masacre's synergy with Reed, Mr. Fantastic, which doesn't actually do anything for him because Masacre doesn't have buffs to pause. But it is one of the most powerful possible synergies for most other Cosmics on your team. This will pause buffs on Venompool, on Cosmic Ghost Rider, on Circe, on Hercules. Like, this is just a very, very strong synergy between Masacre and another extremely strong champion, and it forms a little pseudo-trinity of sorts between Masacre, Venompool, and Reed that I like to bring to content, so it is worth mentioning in my opinion. So that's basically what there is to say about Masacre. I could talk over a few more clips, but I think this video has been long enough, and within the last 2 weeks, I did 2 off-season war videos where I took a ton of difficult fights with him, and I soloed Eternity of Pain Blade with him, and I will link all 3 of those videos in the description. I figure that is plenty of content if you want to go and see this applied in a more holistic way. But I really hope you enjoyed this. Like I said at the top, Masacre is one of my favorite skill champions, and I think there's a lot to him to reward digging into him. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and take care.